Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Happy Friday. Fridays are meant to be happy, or so I'm told. It's 3 o'clock, 3:01. Just waiting for lots of people still trickling in. Hope you guys are doing well. We're going to be starting in probably like 20 seconds or so. Hey, guys.
Oh no, why is Friday meant to be happy?
That's why I say also I'm told.
Okay.
Like, thank God it's Friday and all those things, right?
Yeah. It's all the things that I'm supposed to do within a week, and now I have to put weekend. So
True. Okay, shall we get started, guys? I think we shall. We want to be on time. Chop, 1 hour. Let's go. So, hello everybody. Let's get started. From the team, hello everybody. We are doing our second Momentum Academy talk. So welcome. Previously, we talked about C Group and Shopee. And if you didn't manage to go for that, you can find the recording on YouTube. And today we also have about 400 people who registered. We are really excited to share some interesting stuff with you guys. And of course, cats out the bag, and you guys already know that today we're going to be finding out what is happening at Grab. Next. All right. And most of you already know us. We are Momentum Works, and we are a venture outfit focused on knowledge, community, and experience. Next. And as you will know, or you have heard about us, or even attended our first talk, Momentum Academy is hosting the talk today. And at Momentum Academy, we want to connect the insights we have with what's going on and make it relatable, so it's something that you can bring back to your own individual workplace. Next, please. This is the team who are here today. I think we might need to update some of our otherwise very flattering photos, but you'll be hearing from Nanette, Yorlin, Jungan, and I as we will be sharing in this talk. You would also have heard from Aish. I believe she would have been sending you the reminders and also asking for your questions. And Edwin and Julia, who were instrumental teammates in getting the deck up. All right. I'm sure you will be familiar with our reports. Next page. And today we are going to use the information from our insights, what's going on in the market today, and your burning questions to hopefully share some insightful stuff today. All right, next. Here are some questions that we have received from you, which we will answer most of them as we go along the talk, but fret not if we didn't manage to answer them. We will have additional time at the end of the session. We have about 20 minutes, so ample time to address these questions and more if you do have, which we believe you always have. And next, this is what we'll be covering in the next 1 hour. Of course, we'll be going through what's going on right now, just with Grab and everything, going a bit on the history, answering the golden question of what is a super app, talking a little bit about people and leadership, which is always really important, and of course, Q&A session at the very end. So let's start off. And to start us off, I think let's take a look at what's going on right now. And Janga, I'm going to pass it to you to take over. Janga.
Thanks, Brandon. I see someone who wrote in a chat group, why is Friday not happy? Because probably because Grab's SPAC tanked.
Oh, snap.
So yeah, everyone knows about this. I mean, since Grab went for a SPAC merger, public listing in December, the stock price has dropped about 72%, or close to 1/3. I think especially after the announcement of the Q4 results about a month ago, things took a drastic downturn. Can we move to the next, please? And it made the news. And of course, if you check the headlines, everything is widening losses and biggest loss in a single day, etc., etc. So it seems that the overall sentiment towards Grab has been very negative in the market over the last few weeks. Next, please. And of course, we know that we have a mixed audience today of investors as well as people who work for large companies. And I think some of you would have studied Grab's financial results very carefully. and some of them are trying to understand exactly what happened. So of course, the numbers which caught people's attention. I mean, first it's the revenue, which decreased in the final quarter of last year, and also the incentives, consumer and partner incentives, which have both increased drastically. Let's go a little bit more towards the incentives per se, because that's what really drove the revenue down. Next page, please. So as you can see, what they call excess incentives, which means the incentives which are not part of the revenue, actually rose by 53% year on year, and consumer incentives rose by 44%. Now, these are driven by two things. I mean, first is the mobility business, and the second is the deliveries business. We do believe that what the market is probably particularly worried is the mobility business. Deliveries will understand, right? I mean, we've been covering the sector from Momentum Works for about a few years, and we noticed that the market, I mean, although Grab owns about 50% of the market, it's competitive, it's fragmented, and nobody's owning like 70-80% of the market share, so which means the investment is still needed. That everyone understands. So for mobility, I think this is what raised a bit of concern from the investors, which means there's a significant increase on incentives to get the drivers back on the road. And of course, we have all seen Grab's official line, which says because Southeast Asia is recovering from COVID, and the incentives are needed to get drivers back onto the street. I think Grab explains it to be transitory, and of course, I mean, some investors said, okay, maybe this explanation is satisfactory, but I think many are skeptical. So I think part of this talk, that what we're trying to do is to really understand and Grab as an organization, and I think hopefully by the end of this talk, you will get a better idea of the answers to the questions on the right? I mean, how to interpret this. What happened behind these incentives? Why were these incentives given? And are these incentives permanent or transitory? So towards the end of this, this will also address the issue of the go-to IPO, which is coming next week, and that's going to make the dynamics a bit more interesting. Next, please. And of course, when we look at the stock price changes, we should not neglect the macro factors, the huge level of uncertainties that are happening, right? I mean, the interest rates, I think every time Jerome Powell says something, or anytime anybody from the Fed says something, the market reacts violently for the last 2 to 3 months. And of course, then there is the issue of inflation, which is closely related to interest rates. And there's a war going on in Europe. We have been following very closely about what's happening there, and what's the impact potentially on tech as well as on Southeast Asia. What we do know is that there's a bit of impact on Shopee's business in Poland because of the exchange fluctuations. But we do believe that much of the impact would probably be felt in 2 or 3 quarters when all this, agriculture, all these sanctions are actually showing their real sort of consequences. So these are uncertainties, and we do believe that these uncertainties will probably be there for a while. As a result, next please. We have seen many tech companies, I mean peers of Grab, have had their share prices hammered. C Group, I think we mentioned extensively in our last Momentum Academy chat, their stock price rose almost 30 times over the last 2 years, but recently dropped close to 2/3. And in the Q4 results, the Free Fire game from Garena, their gaming arm, became particularly weak. And of course, I mean, people are still trying to assess what's the impact of all these returning to the streets of the consumers in Southeast Asia have on e-commerce. And on the right is, I think, it's Grab's direct competitor in food delivery, Delivery Hero, which owns Foodpanda as well as Baimin. So they also suffered a significant drop in the last 6 months. Now, what is really interesting is in the middle, Alibaba. Here, we didn't take 6 months or year to date. We took the entire history from the IPO in 2014, which means that if you invest in Alibaba on the IPO, you would have made 11.06% return, which is far behind inflation. And of course, I mean, you guys all know that the macro environment with tech companies in China, the regulatory and the lockdowns recently, as well as the sort of the slowing down of the economy that people are perceiving. So all these factors are driving a lot of uncertainties. And a question what we're trying to address here is that, what do all this mean for Grab? What do all this mean for the tech ecosystem in Southeast Asia in general? And what can we do about it? I mean, from our organization point of view, and also from our sort of whole ecosystem point of view. Next, please. I think to understand this, we should go back a little bit into history, because lots of headlines about what's happening now. And I think let's try to understand a little bit, and also for the sake of the audience who are from outside the region, let's try to understand, I mean, where Grab came from, and we'll get a better idea of why they are where they are now.
Yeah, okay, so thank you, Jangan. I will take the history part. So many of you would know that Grab started in Malaysia as My Taxi. And that time there were more than 20 other competitors in the market. And Grab was not the first one in the market. So fast forward 10 years now, most of these competitors are dead. And Grab now is leading. So what did they do to win the market? So we will reveal more as we move through the key events of Grab history. Next.
Yeah, and this is just a snapshot of Grab in the different countries. And if we start off kind of like clockwise from top left, they have helicopters in the Philippines. Moving to the right, of course, taxis in Thailand. And you have the Grab riders outside McDonald's in Indonesia. Going directly below that is a Grab taxi in Singapore. You see the Grab bikes as well in Vietnam, and of course, just Grab in Kuala Lumpur. That's Masjid Jamek LRT for any Malaysians out there. And really, we felt that they really made their presence felt across the region. Next. However, we think also running a regional business in Southeast Asia is very complex. We took this from a snapshot from one of the reports to just show you the kind of nuances and differences in each country. We take a look at a business process that starts with planning, team tech, product, execution, and feedback, which is kind of a little more straightforward in China and the US. But starting off with Singapore, pretty much aligned there, except that the nuance is you got to give really specific instructions. But coming to Malaysia, you realize that the difference is that in terms of execution, Malaysia has a little bit more of freestyle management. In the Philippines, there is a higher talent mismatch in the leadership roles. In Indonesia, we have the kind of infamous or famous siap baks, but also they're more prone to unexpected blind spots. In Vietnam, in the much early stages of planning, the difference is that it's often that you need to get consensus before going down the journey. And of course, in Thailand, there is a very high talent turnover rate. So we think that Grab might or might not have known this when they went into the different countries early on. But when you do go in early and hire local people, this is something that can be ironed out. Next, over to you, Nanette.
Yes, thank you. And aside of being regional early on, we also said that they have a lot of access to abundant capital. In 2014, if you can see in the graph, is that they managed to grow from Series A to Series D with the investment from Fairtex Ventures, GGV, Tiger Global, DD, and of course SoftBank, their game changer here. And the following year, they also raised the Series E with Kotu and CIC. And a year later, in 2017, they raised the Series G with another DD and SoftBank combo. And finally, Their highest capital was raised in 2019, which then include SoftBank, MUFG, Booking Holdings, Toyota, Hyundai, and Microsoft. Next, over to you, Brendan.
And yeah, as the company grew, everybody knows of when Uber exited Southeast Asia and by selling their business to Grab. And of course, many people have written about this episode, and some say it's because of various reasons. And the question is also, is it really because Grab is more localized? Any thoughts to add, Jagan?
I think there's lots of talks about localization, and I do advise some Chinese tech companies when they go out of China, and generally the message they get from various people who are advising them is that they need to localize. But localization is very complex, right? I mean, there are lots of things you need to do, and I think there are also some benefits of keeping some functions, some of the decisions centralized. So when we get into the organization, we get into the product, we get into the people, it's actually a very, very complex topic. And I'm actually writing a book together with my friend, Professor of Strategy at the INSEAD, on this topic. So, but our sense is that clearly Grab benefited from the capital they had, from the fact that that they were local in all the countries, with lots of local partners, which I think my team is going to talk about, and of course with the backing from their key partners, and also the relationships they have built over the years. But of course, the same can be said about many other companies which have tried at different stages of time to either grow a regional business from the start, or grow a strong business in a country, say Indonesia, say Malaysia, then try to expand into the region. There are actually lots of interesting case studies. I think for companies looking into expanding across the region, and for investors who are looking into assessing whether the business can be regional, there are really lots of case studies in Southeast Asia with all the tech companies over the last 7 years that you can look at. Maybe something that we can talk about next. Yeah. Back to you.
All right, next.
Okay, let me take this part. So a key part of navigating in Southeast Asia is working with governments. And we do know that each country has its own political and policy landscape. Many of the businesses that Grab is in requires close working relationship with the regulators and the government in general. And in this regard, we have to say that Grab is doing a pretty good job. And on the slide here, there are 2 images from Indonesia. And on the pictures on the left, you see Anthony Tan, Grab's founder, accompanying Masayoshi Son, which you all know who he is, to meet with Joko Widodo, or Jokowi, the president of Indonesia. And the picture on the right here was the launch of a new Grab Tech Center in Indonesia, where 9 government ministers attended the event. So I think next I'll leave it to Brendan.
Yeah, and thanks for that. I think also apart from government relationships, which are important, business partnerships as well are equally important. And here are just some snapshots of that. On the left, you can see which is Central Group, which is one of the biggest conglomerates in Thailand. The partnership, of course, with Grab was to enhance Grab's local business there. On the middle, MTech Group, which is also a large conglomerate in Indonesia, also partnered with Grab, also to build synergies between the big media conglomerate, and of course with Grab's existing services. And on the right is Shinhan Financial Group, which is a Korean bank, but in Vietnam, and they partner with Grab, of course, on financial services. And as we all know how much Koreans love Vietnam. But really the key is that Southeast Asia's landscape is very complex, as we've mentioned a few times. And each country has its own business dynamics, influential conglomerates, like we just mentioned, and commercial interests. And the ability to navigate this is an essential part to compete in Southeast Asia. And with all partnerships, there's always a give and take. You get to tap into their resources and even maybe their customers, but you also have to take care of their interests, which means you might not be able to do everything you completely want in your own way. And an important thing to note is that not all partnerships are long-lasting, and it's complicated to maintain relationships.
Let me add
go for it,
let me
Jagan.
add a point. Let me add a pointer here. So I've seen lots of startups, especially from China and some of the established tech companies, come to Southeast Asia, and many of them would say that, oh, I have built this relationship with this conglomerate in Indonesia, or I've been building a really good relationship with this big family in the Philippines. So fast forward 2 or 3 years, and many of these actually partnerships actually fail. I think we've seen a few cases in Thailand as well. So the difficulty is that, I mean, whenever you come into a partnership, you come into a joint venture, you are essentially marrying the two different companies with very different culture, and with very different sort of ways of doing business. And of course, sometimes when the CEO, the big bosses are saying that, hey, we should do this together, and when it comes to the execution level, it's actually quite complex. So it's not necessarily that if you manage to build a partnership that you will be settled for life in this country, and things will evolve, and it takes a lot of grit, lots of persistence, but also lots of smart maneuvers to be able to navigate that consistently. I think for people who are interested to understand this a bit more, I mean, you can read basically about maybe all the top 10 families in Singapore, sorry, not in Singapore, in Indonesia, in the Philippines, in Thailand, as well as in Malaysia. And you would see that even for them, sometimes they build partnerships, sometimes they break partnerships. I think specifically in Grab's case, they seem to be good at navigating through this, but also we see things evolve, right? I mean, there was a partnership with Tokopedia, which is no longer there. And there was a partnership with a big group in Indonesia, which has shifted to another big group in Indonesia. So things actually moving, and it actually takes quite a bit of effort to navigate through this. Back to you.
All right. Thanks, Jagan. Next slide. So I think now that we've covered a bit of ground and a little background, caught us all up to speed, big question that we always get is, what is a super app? And so in this section, let's just take a look at that. Next slide. You know, Grab has always said that their strategy is to be a super app. They've been pushing and kind of iterating this message along the way. This is what Anthony said in an interview with Forbes, where he was kind of referred to as the super app hero. And I'll read it to you. Whether you are in ride-hailing, e-commerce delivery, Grab Food, Grab Mart, it is literally a tab. You just switch it on. Grab's business became actually even more resilient because we are the only player across the region that has this multi-vertical ability. And with that being said, the golden question kind of remains for a lot of us. What really is a super app? And like I said, this is something that we're going to be talking about in this section. Next. So I'm pretty sure everybody has a mobile phone. If you don't, then welcome to 2022. But let's take a look at any consumer tech app you have on your phone. You would quickly realize that Grab's not alone. And everyone is going to this super app, or you can also call it multi-vertical strategy. The core of it really is that how it's able to offer more services to the same customer and using the same existing infrastructure. Now, are super apps really just about adding more tiles to the homepage, or maybe, as Anthony said, as simple as adding a tab? Let's uncover that. Over to you, Nanette.
Okay, Julia, next. Okay, thank you. No, the answer is no, it's not. It's way more than that. And the key thing to that is capital. As you can see from this graph, which was taken from an earlier joint report by Momentum Works and Cento Ventures, multi-vertical companies, or maybe we can say it here, super apps, received the lion's share of a total tech funding in Southeast Asia between 2018 to 2020. And this is not even including what C Group, who you know probably like Shopee is another multi-vertical, received also from the public market. Next. And we should not take this for granted. We did a benchmark between Southeast Asia graphs and Latin America. And we realized that multi-vertical tech companies in Southeast Asia receive much more funding compared to those in Latin America. So Southeast Asia, the evolution of multi-vertical companies, we have to say it's actually quite unique. We'll also be launching a new report on this very soon, so stay tuned on this. And over to you, Brendan.
All right. And with that being said, the concept of super app is divisive, right? Some people love it, some people hate it. And I think we're just going to do a kind of like a quick poll. We hope the tech works. We're going to send out a little bit of a poll. I'm going to give you like maybe 5 seconds to do it. Nanette, please help me. But as the poll comes up, you know, some are against it, some are for it. And while you can see the kind of results going on, thanks for putting in your feedback. But yeah, some are against it, some are for it. If you can see on the slide on the left, we've just picked out kind of news headlines and also stuff on the internet of people saying, you know, that they're against it. Chun-Li, who is Lazada CEO right now, said that companies should work together to build an open network in this digital economy, not a walled garden super app or platform. And he also said that all players should focus on what they do best. But also on the other hand, some are for it. Scott Galloway, he's a famous guy, pretty influential in the business space, said in the long term, the world's largest economy is the biggest prize. A platform that services every aspect of the consumer experience in any market will be one of the most valuable companies in that market. And so what do you guys think? And I'm pretty sure you guys have voted as well. Do you think we can share the results in it just really quickly? Right, okay. 69% said that it's here to stay. Of course, we always have people who are meh and don't care, and that's why we didn't leave you out in the voting process. And so yeah, it is a divisive topic, and I think to really understand this further, I'm going to pass it off to Jiangan. Over to you, Jiangan. You might be muted. Yep.
I think the reason why it's divisive, I think really comes down to the personality of the friends we have been dealing with, the personality of the friends in the community. Some people just, naturally want to focus more on the actual essence of the business. They just hate terms. I'm pretty sure all the people who hate the term unicorn would hate the term super app as well. But there are other people who really don't care what terms you use, but they want to understand exactly what's the logic going behind, and whether things were meant to work, and what are the vulnerabilities. And of course, we look at the so-called super apps in Southeast Asia, and especially Grab, Gojek, and of course, one reference point that always comes out is Meituan. And I think many people in the audience are quite familiar with Meituan as well. So how they started as a group buying site, then moving on to become the largest and second and profitable food delivery company in China, and then they build services like hotels, flash delivery, etc., on top of their core offering, which is food delivery, and a lot of what they do is essentially, if anybody who's familiar with internet in China, you would notice this notion about consumer traffic, as well as the notion of coming from high frequency, low value to low frequency, high value. And I think Meituan's strategy is quite clear in that regard. They have been building the infrastructure based on a lot of low value, high frequency use cases, and then gradually moving to capture more value. I think the same can be said about Alibaba in their core e-commerce offerings. So is Meituan a super app? I think they never mentioned about it, but as you can see that they are finding multiple ways to look at their customers the infrastructure and to basically leverage that to expand into more business lines. Next, please. And of course, many of you will be familiar with these two apps from China. And I think quite a number of companies in Southeast Asia would benchmark these two for their offerings. So Alipay and WeChat, and both have a built-in ecosystem of offerings, and including payment, e-commerce, social, etc., etc. And the amazing thing about this too is that you can basically go around without installing other apps. I mean, you consume the content, you basically make all the purchases, etc., etc., and on one of these two platforms. Of course, I think we heard the term walled gardens, I think previously in this presentation. The question is that, I mean, these two have built walled gardens which are big enough that consumers would use that on a daily basis. I think coming back to Southeast Asia, many companies are aspiring to do that. I do think even for Grab, they are not there yet. They are still making the investment to try to cover more frequent use cases for consumers' daily lives. So I think while these companies offer useful inspirations for companies in Southeast Asia, we have to also look at, I mean, the differences between Southeast Asia and China per se. I mean, the fragmentation we mentioned about, the complex business environment with many of the use cases owned by big groups. In the case of Thailand, the trust that people have been placing on the banks, etc., etc. So it's actually much more complex, and I think it requires lots of navigation to build that at regional level in Southeast Asia. Back to you. Next.
All right. So at the end of the day, we can kind of summarize what we talked about super apps in three main points. Number one, it's more than just cross-selling, right? Number two, it is about linking different business verticals for the same customer base using the same infrastructure. And number three, super apps are complex to run, and it's definitely not a game for everyone. But that's not all. I'm sure you guys are here for the good stuff. Yolin, over to you.
Okay. Next. Okay, so for the next few minutes, I want to go into a bit more operational, a bit more detail, how to make a super app work. There are many secret formulas, but these are three main areas we want to share with you guys today. The first one is that product sequence matters. Second one is single customer or data view. And third thing is relentless on making operations efficient. Okay, next please. So let's jump in. So again, Meituan, we've been talking about it a lot, and Jungan has actually shared what they did, but how did they launch? So this is something very interesting that we pulled out about the Meituan calendar. So since their launch in 2010 as like a Groupon-like company, and then how they evolve. Very interesting enough, if you see the timeline, they started off as group buy, then went into movies 2012, and then 2013 they went into hotels, and that's when they also launched food delivery. 2014 they went into hotel and flight reservation. And I thought, this is actually a bit strange for Southeast Asian context, because food delivery is something high frequency, low margin. Hotels and hotel flight reservation should be the other way. But my colleague in China said, no, during that time, food delivery, hotel, restaurant, and flight were part, to the Chinese audience, they're part of the same thing, they're part of the entertainment. So then I think 2015, Dianping happened. I think they brought over Dianping, and they also launched flight and trains. And you can see the evolution. 2016 they started to explore more, and that's when they actually launched a merchant platform and Kuailiu, which is to deliver products, groceries to the merchants. So they are tackling things one by one. 2017 is then boom, they went into trying many things, including ride hailing. Some of them are still here, some of them are not doing that well. But as you can see that the food delivery has been the core. Come 2019, 2020, they're now into the latest and hottest trend in China as well as Southeast Asia. fresh grocery as well as community group buy. So very importantly, just to summarize, the way that Meituan or any other companies were to launch their products matters. If they were to launch community group buy in 2012, they wouldn't have been as successful as now. Same as food delivery. If they launched later, they would have been, maybe they wouldn't have been able to control the turf as they have done right now. Along the way, as you can see, they've also taken into account the ecosystem. 2016 and 2015 when they worked with other partners, 2016 when they started working with the restaurants and the merchants. So this is something to keep in mind for if you want to launch a super app. Next slide, please. The second secret sauce I want to share would be single customer or data view. So we all know this in theory. Yes, of course, in a company, every department should have the same single customer and data view. In reality, it doesn't work that way. So wanted to share with you an example from Alipay. Janggan mentioned extensively about it. I want to go into a bit more detail. So just a bit of very simple history. Alipay was started to solve to be a settlement system between the buyers and sellers and to solve the trust issue, right? And along the way, when this was offered to the customers, the e-commerce customers, Alibaba realized that, I can actually put, I have payment now, let's offer some kind of loans, simple loans for them to be able to buy more e-commerce good. And that's when the Huapay came out. Huapay actually, or Pay Later, or something that I think at most it's marginally making money, but it actually helps scale the Alibaba e-commerce ecosystem. And along the way, the Alipay were able to understand the customers better through Huapay, the Pay Later product. They could do KYC, they knew their customers better, and then they said, I can actually offer more products for the customer. And then that became number 3, Jiepay, the loan products. And then once you have the customers on board, number 3, part of the customers, you feel they're good, you understand their behavior, you move to 4, cash management. And then number 5, you can actually do credit scoring. So this is just a real life case study on how a tech company has been able to have, for the same customers, understand their different needs and then create products to serve their needs. But this is something that I think a lot of corporates and companies are trying to do in Southeast Asia. There are many, banking is very different here in Southeast Asia compared to China. So, but everybody is trying to break this secret sauce on how to provide a single customer data view. Okay, anything to add?
Can I add something?
Yes.
So this is the experience from China, and I think our sense after having sort of operated and observed what's happening in Southeast Asia for the last few years is that it's actually much more complicated to do the same in Southeast Asia. Regulators is one thing, but on the other hand, I think some of the banks in Southeast Asia are actually pretty good in attracting, retaining their customers and offering the services. So I would say that much more effort for tech company to build as much trust they have as the consumers in certain countries are placing with the leading banks. And this is a bit different from China. I think if you go to China, you ask someone on the street whether they trust Alipay versus a bank, this probably doesn't make much difference.
Okay, thanks, Janggan. Okay, moving on. The final secret sauce I wanted to touch on is, again, relentless efficiency on operation. So these two, the graphs on the left are from our Momentum Works Food Delivery report. So just some pointers for those who may not be aware. Meituan makes up about 67% of the food delivery market in China, but Alibaba's Ele.me only makes up 27%, okay? And that's one reason they had control of key market share of food delivery. Is really important. The second thing is, what is really impressive is that it takes less than a minute for Meituan to dispatch an order to the driver and merchant. And then it takes less than 30 minutes for the Meituan order to arrive at the doorstep, right? And the table on the bottom table shows the food delivery, the line shows the food delivery order, which has been increasing year on year. But what is interesting is the orange table, which shows that the food delivery rider cost as a percentage of the food delivery revenue has been going down year on year until 2019-2020, which has remained 75%, 73%. And this has allowed Meituan to be able to be as fast, and they, in theory, they can be profitable if they did not expand and try out new market lines. Okay, so what is the secret to Meituan's success, right? So on the right, let me just highlight a few key points. The key thing is that once they have the market share, they can actually up the volume, density, and then this leads to operational efficiencies in 4 areas. One is to have strong on the ground network push. Number 2 is have operational model that suits the market to be scalable. Number 3, they have the agents and franchisees, or in the sense partnership support. And number 4, they then able to fulfill, they have the capability to fulfill the orders really, really fast. So ultimately, this is actually no secret. Everybody's trying to do that. It's just that Meituan has been able to take every part of this operation and optimize it bit by bit. And then if you put it together, it is much better than competitors. So that is just a summary. Next. So in summary, we've gone through these 3 key secret sauces, which are not so secret for super apps. But what we wanted to share with the audience is that these 3 learnings are not just applicable to anyone who wants to build a super app. It's also really applicable to anybody who wants to grow their organization, so they want to navigate or pivot, or any startups. So key lessons that are agnostic and can be transferable anywhere. Next. So people and leadership. So I think for us, right, people and leadership is important because we feel that people, the leadership and people are not only because Jungkook is writing a book on it and he actually lectures us every day on this, but because we feel that these are 2 core foundation of any organization that wants to be great, become good. Okay. So next slide. So at Grab, okay, so this is actually something that I find very, very interesting, right? And many people that I speak to from other organizations will always say, oh, this company is very messy. Oh, that company I don't like. The politics is really horrible here. But for many people that have worked at Grab or are still at Grab or have left Grab, the kind of comments we're getting from our communities are consistent. They like working at Grab. They say that it's a good company. They have praise for the management, and they say that it's actually a nice place to work, right? Why? I think some pointers I hear would be it's transparent, people share things, and people are generally that want to help each other. So, and I think this comment from one of our from a Momentum community who's currently working at Grab said, there are not many tech companies, so you can know that are nice to their engineers. So this guy's an engineer, okay? It gives the right level of comfort, and they have the ability to make decisions. So I do, regardless of what had happened, I think I would say that Grab is doing a good job in keeping their people happy and active. So having said that, next slide. Brandon.
Yeah, having said that, we also hear of people who are leaving Grab, right? And there are discussions of people who are jumping ships, leaving to start their own companies. We kind of put a bit of visuals for you to see, etc., etc. But I think really the thing is that we need not, or we shouldn't overinterpret this. This has happened in PayPal, it has happened in Alibaba, Tencent, any high growth company, you name it. There's even a term called PayPal Mafia, you can look it up, where someone kind of mapped ex-PayPal employees that have gone out to start their own companies. And the same is happening at Grab, as you can see here. And we think really it's natural. People are always looking for, the next challenge. And when a company becomes public listed like Grab, some people who are part of the team maybe crave, the challenge of creating something new. And now that they've been trained by Grab, they are capable of starting their own businesses. I'm sure someone has or will write about the Grab mafia group. Next. And the fact is that companies and their cultures do evolve. I'm bringing out another Ben Horowitz book. It's called What You Do Is Who You Are. I kind of brought out that book also at our Shopee talk previously. But for those that don't know, Ben is a prominent tech investor in the States and has run several of his own tech companies. And the context is here, he's talking about how company cultures do change when they evolve. And I think this is really relevant in this context. Let me read a snippet to you. When companies progress beyond their initial battles, they must evolve to take on new challenges. When you bring in outside leadership, which he did at that time, it will make everyone feel highly uncomfortable. That's what cultural change feels like. I often see companies that plan to go into new areas but don't want to shift their culture accordingly. And my sense and our sense is that Grab's culture will change now that they have gone IPO. Next. Oh, the good stuff. Janggan, over to you. Janggan's kind of busy.
I was actually typing to some of the discussions in the chat, which is going really interesting. But anyway, so we all know that the GoTo is going for IPO next week. I think only the 11th, if I remember correctly. So of course, I'm not sure how many of you have watched their due diligence event, which has very nice performances. But the underlying factor is that the company is finally going for public listing in Jakarta first, with the target valuation of close to $30 billion. I think theoretically there could be lots of synergies that the on-demand business, the e-commerce business, the financial services business could build down the road. So far, we don't see much of that. And of course, when we look at the competition between GoTo and Grab, so you would see that I think there are lots of numbers. So GoTo's IPO prospectus is, I think, 970 pages in Bahasa. So we have one colleague which actually went through everything, and I think I want to pick up two metrics that we want to use. I mean, first is the cash liquidity, and we know that Grab has lots of cash. I mean, close to $9 billion as of the end of last year. We know that GoTo would have probably about 3.8 billion if the IPO goes smoothly. So there's a bit of gap here, and I think Tokopedia also faces the strong competition from Shopee. So we would think that GoTo would need to find ways to raise more money to stay in this competition and compete effectively. Actually, the truth is that beginning of last year, we predicted that we put in our predictions that the Grab should merge with Gojek or vice versa. So that would have made more sense, eliminating the competition in food delivery, which actually brings lots of money in Indonesia at least. But of course, in reality, things happened the other way. So now we're in a situation that the competition will still continue for a while. And I think it's worth watching what happens next. The other number that we look at is that, I mean, whether you call it GMV or GTV for the on-demand segment, which means ride-hailing and food delivery. Grab is larger than GoTo, and I think in terms of profitability point of view, I mean, Singapore, Malaysia, and to a certain extent Thailand are all in better positions compared to Indonesia, which probably is a market which you need to continuously invest for a period of time. So with all these dynamics happening, I think GoTo is going public, and they are going to raise money, and the competition is going to continue. I think some level of rationalization is already happening between these two players. Until somebody else came in, right? So the dynamics moving forward would be interesting. But if you look at where it stands, I do think that GoTo needs to raise more money than what they have now.
Yeah, this is just kind of what we've covered today. I believe we've answered a lot of these questions throughout the talk. Probably the only one that we have not answered is 7 and 8. But also Janggan has just been answering your questions throughout, and yeah, we have a short time for questions. I will go through that shortly. Next slide. Just really quickly before that, just a recap of Momentum Academy and what we do, which is again to inform, enable, and connect people. So this session is kind of a prime example of that. Below are some of our client programs, of course, pre and post-COVID. And you can read that on your own. Next slide. I think we've got about a good 7 minutes for Q&A. Jenka, you want to take over? So maybe you don't have to answer in chat, but up to you. Keep your questions coming in, guys. I think we've got about 7 minutes here for that. Jenka, you're muted, by the way.
There's already a long discussion going on. I'm starting from
I can tell.
To how big do you think the impact of rising fuel and petrol cost will be on ride hailing? I think that Q-Ren, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, is actually right to say that, I mean, the issue is quite complex. We do have a feeling that that Grab's users, as it stands now, is more premium compared to many of the other competitors. But of course, I mean, things will converge. I mean, they will need to expand into the more mass markets and vice versa. So the question about fuel price, and like I said, about sanctions, about all these geopolitical uncertainties, it's very complex issues, and it's not just impacting the fuel prices that drivers have to fork out. I mean, there are other impacts in the society that we need to be mindful of. And the true consequences will probably take more than 1 quarter, or even 2 quarters, or even until the end of this year to show. I think Tiffany is asking for food delivery segment. Before government intervention on take rate, Grab's take rate is higher than that of Meituan's. Why is that? Looks like the competition is more fierce in ASEAN, given Meituan's leadership position in food delivery. I think in many sectors, I mean, if you look at payment per se, the MDR, merchant discount rate that people are able to charge in China has been historically much lower than what the payment players have been able to charge in Southeast Asia. So I do think this issue is related to where people stand and the historical stance towards SMEs. I mean, you do think that I mean, SMEs in China complain much more compared to SMEs in Southeast Asia. So it's different starting point. But I do think things might converge a little bit. So from Grab's point of view, or any food delivery player point of view, they will need to raise the efficiency, because you can't take the current tech rate for granted. Somebody private messaged me asking what are the failed partnerships in Thailand. It's between a Chinese company and a Thai company. I'm not going to say which one. You can guess. What else? What are your thoughts on Didi? Despite having much large market share, they are unable to have much influence on pricing, and fierce competition has been. I have some good friends who over the course of history worked in various parts of Didi's government relations team. I have to say that they faced a really, really tough time. I mean, in different parts of China, and maybe something to do with their culture, something to do with how they started, and something to do with the way they were managing government relations. But they do face lots of pressure from the government. And on the other hand, so you know, Didi has been trying to get out of ride hailing. They moved into food delivery. They started community group buy. They were doing food delivery in Mexico, for example. So, but I think from observers' point of view, you look at what they have been doing. They seem to be struggling quite a bit with anything to do that has a supply chain element in it. I don't exactly know what's the reason for that, but China is a very competitive market, and you have so many. I mean, the big walled gardens who can distribute consumer traffic to different ride-hailing players. So Didi really doesn't have much advantage in China, but they have all the heavy operations of managing all these drivers. Yeah, Funde said a very good point. Didi's customer loyalty is not strong, so people can easily change to other apps if they raise its price. Lois, as GoTo is going public, Tokopedia will certainly burn money in Indonesia. Who would win in the end, Shopee or Toko, and why? I think at the current stance, I do think that Shopee has a stronger team, but of course, I mean, things can evolve. And I think with more liquidity, Tokopedia will probably be able to upgrade or adapt some of their tactics and products. Somebody said that's exactly my point. One majority market share. I think that we're discussed. In simple terms, what is the difference between Grab's base and excess incentives? In which markets do you think Grab is focusing their incentives on for deliveries? I think deliveries would be in the markets where you have competition. I mean, in the markets of Indonesia, Thailand, etc. And I do think a lot of their driver incentives will probably be in Singapore because that's where, I mean, some of the users are generating a lot of GMV, and it would be good to keep these users. And based on excess incentives, I mean, this is something to do with the initial F4 filing. I think you can check in the SEC records, and I think they put definition there. So basically, the point is that Grab's revenue will be different from GoTo's revenue. I think GoTo has not put the incentives, I think, beyond a certain point as contra-revenue item. From the management team and the organizational perspective, who's better, GoTo versus Grab and versus CEO? That's a huge topic, which will probably be worth I don't know, half a day of explanation. I think we'll leave it to next. Maybe we should have a dedicated piece about this.
Okay.
Is Grab's move into financial offerings products the right move for Grab? I do think that many of the large tech players eventually always have financial services as a key offering. The question is that, I mean, how do you execute it that well? And how do you navigate the different dynamics in different countries where you have strong local incumbent players, be it banks, be it large retail groups, which are also into finance. So this is an area which will probably take lots of effort to navigate. And we have more questions. Taking a look at massive watches, do you think the current valuation represents undervaluation? From Warren Gates, I would think from valuation point of view, I mean, what's happening now is basically a result of a lot of uncertainties. And I would not want to comment too much about, I mean, whether it's undervalued or overvalued. Probably worth to wait for two or three quarters until all this uncertainties settle down, if they do settle down, to figure out, I mean, what's the right valuation that the market is giving to these companies, be it Grab, be it GoTo, be it C. Last question here. Grab's share price has fallen 70%, as you mentioned, due to investors' concerns about profitability. Do you think they will be able to conduct? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that will address privately. Is Tokopedia going to drag Grab down when competing against Grab? I don't know. I mean, I think the two businesses are run still pretty separately now. So resource allocation for a conglomerate is also a tough question. I think we're at 4 p.m. Yeah.
Thanks, Jangan. Just to wrap up, give me just 30 seconds, guys. I'm going to let you guys go. Next slide. Here are just some ideas we have brewing still. Crypto, fintech, or any other burning topics, do let us know. I assume GoTo is going to be a big one. We'll be sending you an email after this with the slides, so you can also let us know there, because we have a feedback form. So we would also really greatly appreciate if you could drop us some feedback. Helps us create and curate more of these sessions. Next slide. Here are some of upcoming sharings coming from Momentumals really soon. So live commerce in Southeast Asia, that's one that's coming, and also the Southeast Asia Tech Investment FY21 report, of course, that we've been doing with Cento Ventures. And with that being said, guys, it was a pleasure hosting you today. Do follow us on our socials. Next slide. We share our insights and updates on talks like these there. You can reach us to say hi as well. And on behalf of the team and everybody, thank you so much. We hope you found the session useful, and have a good weekend, and we'll see you guys really soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.